They handed me a plate and pointed to the garage. Said the table was full. Said they'd bring me some sweet tea in a minute. I walked past the laughter, past the candles, past my own name on the mailbox. And I sat in the garage. Cold floor, one folding chair, laundry basket beside me, smell of detergent and turkey mixed in the air. My daughter-in-law taped a napkin to my lap like I couldn't do it myself. Like I wasn't the one who spent years setting tables they now eat from. I looked down at the plate. Ham, stuffing, cranberry sauce, neat and full, just like their dining room. And I thought to myself, they say there isn't enough room at the table, but they sure forgot who paid for the roof above it. So I sat. Quietly, chewing each bite like it was the last Thanksgiving I'd ever spend swallowing my pride. And that was the moment everything changed. Before I go on, I just want to thank you for being here. You could be anywhere right now, doing anything. But you're here, listening to me. That means more than you know. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I don't care if it's a big city, a small town, or your break room at work. If you've ever felt overlooked in a place you helped build, then we already understand each other. I tell these stories because nobody else ever asked. And if I didn't speak, it'd all get buried with me. But not today. If you've ever been pushed aside by your own family, if you've ever been treated like a burden in a place where you once mattered, I hope you stay with me. This story might sound like mine, but it might just echo yours too. And if it does, tell me your story below. I'm listening. It wasn't always like this. No. It used to be my house and my table. My name's Eleanor. I'm 76 years old, a widow, and a mother of 3 boys I raised with bare hands and quiet prayers. We didn't grow up with much, but what we had we shared, and we shared it with heart. Back then the holidays felt different. They were real, not just about decorations or social media photos, but about people, about effort, about home. Every Thanksgiving I'd start cooking before the first light touched the curtains. That old stove of mine used to groan from all the weight I'd put on it. 2 big turkeys, one stuffed, one not, and so many side dishes I had to label the foil so I wouldn't forget what was what. I made sweet potato pie the way my mama taught me, with extra nutmeg and real butter, not shortcuts. The kitchen would smell like sugar and sage all at once. I didn't do store-bought. I believed in food you could taste with your memories. The boys would run through the house like a storm. One turning up the music, one setting the table wrong on purpose just to make me laugh, and the youngest always sneaking bites from the pie dish when he thought I wasn't looking. Their father, God rest him, would pretend to take credit for the turkey, but everybody knew who did the work. And I didn't mind. I liked seeing them full, hearing their stories, watching them lean back in their chairs with sleepy smiles. Even when money was tight, and it often was, I made sure no one left that house feeling like less. And if a neighbor showed up, or a friend of a friend had nowhere to go, I just reached for another plate. We didn't ask why. We just made room. It didn't matter if chairs didn't match. It didn't matter if someone had to sit on a stool or a step, or even on a folded blanket by the fireplace. What mattered was that no one ever felt like an afterthought. That was the house I built, the home I kept, the kind of table I held space for with both hands. I never asked for praise, never needed applause. All I ever wanted was a little warmth and a seat. And now I'm sitting in a garage, next to a dryer and a half-used jug of laundry detergent, with a paper napkin pressed into my lap like I was some old thing they didn't know where to place. Things didn't change overnight. No, it was slow, quiet, like a soft wind moving picture frames just a little crooked, until you realize the wall feels empty. The year my son married her, that's when it started. She came in with bright ideas and a strong voice. Always had something new to suggest, always had a different way of doing things. At first, I didn't mind. I thought she's just trying to help, just wants to make her place in the family. I welcomed her, set a plate for her, like I did for anyone, gave her my recipes, my secrets, even let her use the big roasting pan I'd had for 30 years, the one that held every Thanksgiving turkey since the boys were small. But little by little, my table wasn't mine anymore. First, it was the guest list. Suddenly, cousins I hadn't seen in years were getting invited, while friends I'd shared coffee with for decades weren't even told we were hosting. Then the food changed. Store-bought stuffing, frozen pies, fancy drinks with cinnamon sticks floating in them. I watched from the kitchen doorway while she called it modernizing. And my sweet potato pie? She said it was too old-fashioned for this generation. Next came the music. No gospel, no jazz. Just whatever was trendy. I stood there one year, holding a platter of deviled eggs, and realized nobody had even asked me to pray over the meal. That used to be my moment. Not because I needed attention, but because I believed in starting things with thanks. But this new setup didn't leave much room for things like that. Then one day I walked past the fireplace and saw the mantle. My wedding photo, gone. Replaced with a framed print that said, grateful, thankful, blessed. Just words, pretty ones. But not mine. I didn't ask where the photo went, I just nodded and kept walking. But inside, I felt something crack, something quiet, like maybe I wasn't part of the picture anymore, literally and otherwise. They didn't say it out loud, no one had to, but I felt it, like I'd overstayed my welcome in the very home I built, paid for, scrubbed top to bottom and filled with memories they now treat like clutter. And still, I stayed quiet. Because when you've given everything, you don't expect a thank you. But you never expect to be pushed out, either, Gar. You don't need a shouting match to feel left out. Sometimes all it takes is a missing plate. At first, it was little things. My grandson used to burst through the door and run straight to my room. "Grandma," he'd yell, jumping into my arms like he was 5 again, even though he was almost 12. I used to keep gumdrops in my drawer just for him. It was our little thing. Then one visit, he didn't come to my room. He sat on the couch, eyes glued to a tablet, feet on the table I once protected with lace runners. When I walked in, he glanced up. Hey. That was it. Next time, he didn't speak at all. I told myself he was growing up. That's what kids do. But my heart knew better. You can feel when someone's been told to treat you different. One evening, I walked into the kitchen while my daughter-in-law was preparing dinner. She had her phone out following a recipe. I smiled and said, "That smells good. You using my cornbread recipe?" She laughed a little and said, "Oh no, I found this one on Pinterest. It's updated. Less heavy." Less heavy? I held my tongue, walked away. But in my chest, something sank. My food was more than food. It was time, care, memory. And now it was too heavy? A week before Thanksgiving, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. I was folding towels in the hallway. They were in the living room, my son and his wife. "She's old," she whispered, not even bothering to lower her voice all the way. "Let's keep her out of the mess this year. It's too much having her in the way." I froze, towel in hand. My son didn't say anything. He just hummed. Changed the subject. That silence, it hit harder than any insult ever could. He didn't defend me, didn't speak up, just let it slide like it was true. Later, I asked him if we were still having Thanksgiving like always. He gave me that nervous smile, the kind grown children give when they're lying, and said, "Of course, Ma, just a little smaller this year. Fewer seats, less stress. Fewer seats, less stress." And apparently, no room for me. They had a pre-Thanksgiving dinner 2 nights before the real one. Called it a Friendsgiving. I found out on social media. Photos everywhere, laughter, plates stacked, my living room full. No one told me. I just stared at the screen, at my furniture, my walls, my family, and realized I wasn't even considered part of the story anymore. Not the table, not the guest list, not the memory. I hadn't been pushed out with noise. I'd been replaced in silence. Thanksgiving came. The food was ready. The house smelled like home. Roasted turkey, cinnamon, something sweet baking in the oven. I knew the smell by heart. I'd created it for years. It used to mean joy. This time, it felt hollow. I stood outside the kitchen for a second, just watching. My son was pouring drinks. My daughter-in-law was laughing with her friends. Kids ran up and down the hallway with paper crowns on their heads. And me? I stood there like a guest who forgot to RSVP. My son finally noticed me and walked over. He gave me a quick hug, light and stiff like he was busy. His eyes didn't hold mine. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Happy Thanksgiving." "Where should I sit?" I asked, holding the pie I baked from scratch, the same one they used to fight over. He looked toward the dining room. Every seat taken. His wife caught his eye. There was a pause. Then, like it was nothing, he said, "We've set up a space for you in the garage, just for now. It's quieter out there." I stared at him. He didn't look back, just pointed toward the door by the laundry room. No apology, no kindness, just routine. Like it had already been decided and didn't need discussing. I opened the garage door. Cold air hit me first. The smell of detergent, cardboard boxes, and old tools filled the space. They'd placed a metal folding chair beside the washing machine. A small table stood in front of it. One plate, one cup, one napkin. No candles, no music, just silence and cement. My daughter-in-law came in for a second and smiled like she was doing me a favor. "Here we go," she said, tapping the napkin onto my lap like I couldn't do it myself. "It's just for now, Mom. We'll check on you in a bit." She was gone before I could answer. So I sat. I held the fork in one hand and hid the tears with the other. I looked down at the food. It was warm, but I felt cold. Through the small garage window, I could see shadows dancing across the living room. Laughter, clinking glasses, plates being passed. My grandson sitting on someone else's lap. I didn't expect much, but I never thought I'd be forgotten in a house I helped build. And it wasn't just the cold that hurt, it was the comfort they had, without me. That moment didn't break me, but it told me everything I needed to know. I didn't finish my plate. I sat there in that cold garage holding the fork but not moving. I wasn't hungry anymore. Not for food, at least. I just stared at the walls, at the boxes, at the folding chair under me. My legs started to ache, but I didn't shift, and that's when something came back to me. Clear, sudden, and sharp. They forgot. But I didn't. I still had the original deed. You see, this house didn't just appear. It wasn't a gift from heaven. My husband and I bought it together. Back when the roof leaked, the paint peeled, and the yard had more weeds than grass. We built it up with every spare dollar. Painted walls after midnight, slept on a mattress on the floor while we saved for proper furniture. It took us 27 years to pay it off. And when we did, we framed the final receipt and kissed it. Years later, after he passed, I got tired of managing it alone. I thought maybe it was time to pass the house down. So I called my oldest son, the same one who told me to sit in the garage. I signed over half the ownership, just half. The rest stayed in my name. Just in case, my husband once told me. People change when money touches the table. Keep your name where it matters. Back then, I thought he was being too careful. But now, sitting alone in the cold, I understood exactly what he meant. They didn't just forget the recipe to my dressing. They forgot the paper that kept this house standing with my name on it, and I had let it all go quietly for years, until that garage moment reminded me they saw me as extra. Temporary. But I wasn't. I stood up from that chair. I walked to the edge of the garage and opened the back door. The wind hit my face like truth. I didn't cry. I didn't knock on their door. I didn't need to. I stepped out into the yard and sat on the porch, the one I helped build with my own hands. I pulled out my phone, found the number, and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hello?" I said. "Yes. This is Eleanor. I need to list a house." A pause. Then came the voice on the other end. "Yours?" I looked back toward the house where the light still danced and no one had noticed I was gone. I answered, calm and sure. "Yes, mine." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset. I'd already been upset, too many times to count. But that night, I was clear, calm, still, like something in me had clicked into place. The next morning, before the sun was even high, I dressed slow, packed my purse, and got in a cab. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. When I walked into the realtor's office, the same one who helped us buy the house years ago, she looked at me and said, "Mrs. Eleanor, it's been a while." I smiled. Not too long to remember who owns what. She pulled up the records. My name was still there, right there beside my late husband's, and now my son's, half mine, half given. The half I held was more than enough. She looked up at me and asked, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I said what I knew in my bones. They fed me cold turkey in a warm house. I'm done swallowing that kind of treatment. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't even frown. I signed the papers, one stroke at a time. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. My heart didn't question it. Because sometimes the strongest move isn't a scream. It's a signature. And in that quiet little office with a fresh cup of coffee on the desk and sunlight slipping through the blinds, I raised something they didn't expect. Not my voice. My listing price. It was time. Time they remembered whose name still held weight. Time they stopped confusing my silence for weakness. Time I stopped asking for a seat in a house I paid for. They thought they'd pushed me out. I simply opened the door. From the other side. 2 weeks before Christmas, the sign went up. It was early in the morning. The ground still had frost on it, and the sky was that soft gray that makes everything feel quiet. The realtor parked at the end of the driveway and got out with the sign in her hand. I stood by the window, holding a cup of tea, and watched her press the metal legs into the ground. For sale. Big, bold letters. And just like that, the house was no longer theirs to take for granted. I didn't say a word when they saw it. I didn't have to. The silence in that house changed, not the usual kind. This was different, tense, still. Like they didn't know what to say but couldn't pretend not to see it. Later that evening, my son came into my room. He didn't knock, he just walked in, holding his phone, his face tight with confusion. "Why would you do this, Ma?" I looked up at him. Calm, steady, like a mother who had done the math a long time ago. "You made room for me in the garage," I said. "Now I made space for myself, outside your disrespect." He stood there like he didn't recognize me. Like the woman who gave him everything had suddenly become a stranger because she finally said no. A few hours later, I overheard him and his wife in the kitchen, whispering. Angry. Panicked. She was saying things like, "She can't do this, and where will we go?" I smiled to myself. They forgot the paperwork, forgot the years, forgot the name that still held legal ground beneath every one of their complaints. They had turned me into a shadow in my own home. Now I had brought back the light. They didn't speak to me for 3 days after that. Walked past me like I wasn't even there. Slammed doors, skipped small talk, but I didn't feel bad. Not one bit. That cold silence, it was nothing compared to the peace I felt in my chest. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen, not by them, by myself. They moved out before New Year's Eve. No goodbye. No explanation. Just packed their things in a hurry and left. I watched from the front window as the moving truck pulled away. Boxes stacked high, furniture crammed in crooked. My son didn't even glance back. And you know what? That was fine with me. The funny part, of all the things they took, they left the folding chair behind. The same metal one they sat me in. Cold, wobbly, alone. It sat in the garage, right where they put me, like a reminder of how small they thought I was. Like proof of how little they understood me. I didn't touch it, just closed the door. Later that day, I walked through the house, room by room, slowly, quietly, not with sadness, but with memory. I ran my fingers along the hallway wall where pencil marks still showed the heights of my boys as they grew. Every line told a story. First steps, first day of school. That time my youngest grew 2 inches over summer and thought he'd become a man. The kitchen was still full of smells, not from food, but from years. Soap, lemons, flour, vanilla. Laughter that once echoed off the tile now felt like a distant hum in the air. In the living room, I sat on the old couch for a moment. The cushions sagged a little, just like I did, but it was familiar. It held me. And then I walked into the dining room. The heart of it all. The table was bare now. No tablecloth, no centerpiece, just wood and silence. I stood there for a long time. This was the table where I fed family, healed arguments, folded napkins with love, and prayed over meals that stretched farther than our money ever did. And for one last time, I wiped it down. I didn't cry. My eyes were dry, my hands steady. I just took the cloth, ran it across the surface slowly, like I was tucking something in for a peaceful sleep. Not because it was dirty, but because it was done. I built this life one sacrifice at a time. Every pot I stirred, every shirt I ironed, every birthday I baked through even when I had nothing but flour and faith. And now I had taken it back. Not with noise, not with anger, but in silence. The kind of silence that comes after a storm has passed and you realize you're still standing, not empty, whole. Next Thanksgiving, things looked different. I didn't roast a turkey. I didn't wake up at 4 a.m. to brine, season, or stuff anything. I didn't worry about how many chairs I had or whether the napkins matched. That morning, I warmed a small sweet potato pie, just one. No big feast, no rush, just the smell of cinnamon, nutmeg, and peace. I set out 2 plates. Then I called my neighbor's daughter, the young girl with the newborn baby whose husband was still overseas. She had no family nearby and was planning to eat leftovers from the fridge. I said, "Come over, sweetheart. I got enough pie for both of us." She brought the baby in a soft pink blanket and handed me a little flour from the corner store. It wasn't much, but it meant the world. She didn't come to impress. She came with heart. We sat at the small table in my new place, just the two of us and that baby, who kept trying to grab the spoon out of her mama's hand. The girl laughed, embarrassed, but I smiled and said, "Don't worry, that's what babies are supposed to do, reach for things." We didn't have music playing, no playlist, no big toast. But we talked. We talked about growing up, about motherhood, about missing people who were still alive, and the strange kind of pain that brings. She cried a little. So did I. Not from sadness, from relief, from not having to pretend. The laughter that came after, it wasn't loud, but it was real. We laughed when the baby spilled juice all over her onesie. We laughed when I told her about the time my middle son tried to deep fry a turkey and nearly lit the yard on fire. We laughed when the pie came out a little too soft in the middle and I said, "That's okay, so am I." For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to hold anything together. I wasn't squeezing into someone else's plan. I wasn't waiting for a chair to open up. I was just there. Fully. Honestly. With people who actually saw me. And while they, the ones who used to call this house theirs, probably sat in silence somewhere, figuring out how to fill a space they didn't understand. I was here, in a small kitchen, with one baby giggling and one young woman saying, "Thank you, Miss Eleanor, this feels like home." And it did. The house was smaller, but the heart inside, it had never been bigger. March came, cold mornings, soft sunlight, and quiet days. I had just finished folding some towels when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number right away, but I picked up anyway. It was my son. His voice cracked a little when he said, "Hey Ma, how you doing?" I didn't say much at first, just let the silence sit between us. Not heavy, not angry, just honest. He went on. Told me they'd been thinking about me. Said the house didn't feel the same after they left. Said the kids missed me, especially the youngest. Then came the excuses. "It was the holiday stress, Ma. We didn't mean to hurt you. You know how things get when family grows." And finally, he blamed his wife. Said she had been trying too hard to make the holiday her own. Said he didn't notice how I was being treated until it was too late. I listened. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tell him about the nights I cried, or the garage, or the pie I ate alone. I didn't need to. Instead, I said something simple. "I raised you better." He went quiet. Then I added, "But I'm not raising your guilt too." I could hear his breath change on the other end. Like he wanted to say something else but didn't know how. That was fine. I'd said what needed saying. He asked if we could maybe start fresh. If he could come by sometime with the kids. Maybe bring me dinner. Maybe sit and talk. I didn't slam the door on him. But I didn't swing it wide open either. I told him, "You're always welcome to try. But I'm not the same woman who sat in the garage. That version of me, you all folded her up like a spare chair and left her behind. I don't carry her anymore." He said he understood. I'm not sure if he really did, but at least he heard it. We talked for a few more minutes. Light stuff. The weather. The kids' school. Then we hung up, and I sat there holding the phone for a while. It wasn't closure. Not really. But it was something. And I wasn't bitter. I just knew better now. Some doors stay open, but not wide. Not when they've been slammed too many times without apology. I still pray for him. I still love him. That'll never change. But I also learned to love myself enough not to sit outside my own life waiting for someone else to let me back in. I'm sitting out here now, on this old porch chair that creaks every time I lean back, just like my knees do when I stand up too fast. Got my tea in one hand, warm, not too sweet, just how I like it. And I'm thinking about how easy it is to forget people, not strangers. I mean, the people closest to you, the ones you carried, the ones you cooked for, prayed for, sat up with when they had fevers, held on to when the world felt too heavy for them to carry alone. It hurts the most when the ones you raised treat you like you don't matter anymore. Have you ever been handed leftovers in a house you built with full hands? Have you ever been honored in the past, only to be set aside in the present, like your time ran out just because your hair turned gray? Have you ever looked around a room filled with people you love and realized you were the only one they stopped seeing? This story, it wasn't just mine. It's for the ones who gave everything and got a folding chair. For the ones who brought life into rooms and were told they took up too much space. For the ones who cooked for years and got replaced by store-bought dishes with fake smiles. For the ones who stayed quiet, hoping to be respected, only to find that silence was taken for weakness. But listen to me, and listen real close. They forgot I paid for the house, but I remembered who I was. And that memory, that truth, it was stronger than their forgetfulness could ever be. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need a big speech. All I needed was to stop asking for a seat and start standing in my worth. So if you've ever been told to step aside, if they ever made you feel like a guest in your own story, if you've ever sat outside while they laughed inside, tell me below. Tell me your story. I want to read it. Because this space right here, it's not a garage. And it's not the back row. It's a place for people who were left out, but never gave up. So go on and leave a comment. And if this story touched your heart in any way, subscribe to Granny Stories. There's more where that came from. Because I don't sit in garages anymore, and I don't let people fold me up and pack me away. I stand, quietly, fully, and completely. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. More love from Granny.